Bamidbar, Chapter 33. These are the stages in the journey of the people of Israel as they left the land of Egypt, divided into groups under the leadership of Moshe and Aharon. Moshe recorded each of the stages of their journey by order of Adonai. Here are the starting points of each stage. They began their journey from Ramses in the first month. On the 15th day of the first month, the morning after the Pesach, the people of Israel left proudly in view of all the Egyptians. While the Egyptians were burying those among them whom Adonai had killed, all their firstborn, Adonai had also executed judgment on their gods. The people of Israel moved on from Ramses and camped at Sukkot. They moved on from Sukkot and camped at Etam, by the edge of the desert. They moved on from Etam and turned back to Pi Hacherat, in front of Baal Zephon, and camped before Migdal. They moved on from Panea Hacherat, passed through the sea to the desert, continued 3 days' journey into the Etam desert, and camped at Marah. They moved on from Marah and came to Elim. In Elim were 12 springs and 70 palm trees, so they camped there. They moved on from Elim and camped by the Sea of Suf. They moved on from the Sea of Suf and camped in the Sin desert. They moved on from the Sin desert and camped at Dafka. They moved on from Dafka and camped at Alush. They moved on from Alush and camped at Rephidim, where there was no water for the people to drink. They moved on from Rephidim and camped in the Sinai desert. They moved on from the Sinai desert and camped at Kivrat HaTa'ava. They moved on from Kivrat HaTa'ava and camped in Hatzerat. They moved on from Hatzerat and camped at Ritma. They moved on from Ritma and camped at Ramon Peretz. They moved on from Ramon Peretz and camped at Livna. They moved on from Livna and camped at Rissa. They moved on from Rissa and camped at Kahela. They moved on from Kahela and camped at Mount Shefer. They moved on from Mount Shefer and camped at Harada. They moved on from Harada and camped at Makhalat. They moved on from Makhalat and camped at Tachat. They moved on from Tachat and camped at Tarak. They moved on from Tarak and camped at Mitka. They moved on from Mitka and camped at Hashmona. They moved on from Hashmona and camped at Mazarat. They moved on from Mazarat and camped at Bnei Ya'akan. They moved on from Bnei Ya'akan and camped at Hor Hagigdad. They moved on from Hor Hagidgad and camped at Yot Havata. They moved on from Yot Havata and camped at Avrona. They moved on from Avrona and camped at Etzion Gever. They moved on from Etzion Gever and camped in the Zin desert, that is, Kadesh. They moved on from Kadesh and camped at Mount Hor, at the border of the land of Edom. At Adonai's order, Aharon the Kohen went up on Mount Hor, and he died there on the first day of the 5th month of the 40th year after the people of Israel had left the land of Egypt. Aharon was 123 years old when he died on Mount Hor. The Canaanite, the king of Arad, who lived in the Negev in the land of Canaan, had heard that the people of Israel were coming. So they moved on from Mount Hor and camped at Zalmona. They moved on from Zalmona and camped at Punon. They moved on from Punon and camped at Ovat. They moved on from Ovat and camped at Iye ha-Avarim by the border of Moab. They moved on from Eim and camped at Divon Gad. They moved on from Divon Gad and camped at Almon Divlataim. They moved on from Almon Divlataim and camped in the Avarim range in front of Nevo. They moved on from the Avarim range and camped in the plains of Moab by the Yarden, across from Jericho. Their camps by the Yarden extended from Beit ha-Yeshimot all the way to Avel Hashittim in the plains of Moab. Adonai spoke to Moshe in the plains of Moab by the Yarden, across from Jericho. He said, to tell the people of Israel, when you cross the Yarden into the land of Canaan, you are to expel all the people living in the land from in front of you, destroy all their stone figures, destroy all their metal statues, and demolish all their high places. Drive out the inhabitants of the land and live in it, for I have given the land to you to possess. You will inherit the land by lot according to your families. You are to give more land to the larger families and less to the smaller ones. Wherever the lot falls to any particular person, that will be his property. You will inherit according to the tribes of your ancestors. But if you don't drive out the inhabitants of the land from in front of you, then those you allow to remain will become like thorns in your eyes and stings in your sides. They will harass you in the land where you are living, and in this event I will do to you what I intended to do to them.